Your soulmate is sighing, I found something about you that I can never unsee. My beloved child. Something has shifted in the way your soulmate sees you, and once you understand what they discovered, you will realize why they cannot simply return to the way they thought about you before. They found something about you that they can never unsee. But here is what makes this moment so powerful: it was not some obvious detail sitting in plain sight. It was something hidden beneath your words, your silence, your choices, and the way you carried yourself when nobody seemed to notice. Don't skip, because what they discovered has changed an assumption they had carried for far too long. For a while, your soulmate believed they understood you completely. They thought they knew why you sometimes became quiet. They thought they understood why you protected certain feelings, why you did not always explain yourself, and why there were moments when you seemed emotionally distant even when you cared deeply. But then one small detail challenged everything. Maybe it was something they heard about you. Maybe it was a memory that suddenly made sense. Maybe they remembered a moment when you could have reacted differently, yet you chose patience. Whatever triggered it, they began looking backward through every interaction with new eyes. And that is when the pieces started connecting. Stay till the end, because the biggest realization has not been revealed yet. Your soulmate started asking themselves questions they had avoided before. Why did you remain calm when misunderstanding would have justified anger? Why did you sometimes walk away instead of trying to prove yourself? Why did you keep certain struggles private instead of using them to gain sympathy? And why, after everything, did something about your presence remain impossible to forget? Those questions led them toward an answer they were not prepared for. They realized there was an entire side of you they had overlooked. Not because you were hiding something terrible, but because they had been looking at the surface while the truth was living underneath. And when they finally saw it, they could not unsee it. Something huge is waiting for you, because what happened next turned simple curiosity into an emotional realization they could no longer ignore. Then came the moment that changed the atmosphere completely. Your soulmate remembered one particular situation involving you, and suddenly the meaning of it looked completely different. At the time, they may have misunderstood your silence as indifference. They may have interpreted your distance as a lack of feeling. They may even have wondered whether you had already moved on emotionally. But now they saw another possibility. What if your silence had actually been restraint? What if you stepped back because you refused to force something that needed to happen naturally? What if the person they thought was difficult to understand was actually someone protecting a heart that had already given more than anyone realized? Don't skip. This is where the discovery becomes impossible for them to forget. Your soulmate began comparing what people said about you with what they had personally witnessed. The difference was startling. Other people might have formed opinions from fragments, but your soulmate had seen moments they could no longer dismiss. They remembered your patience. They remembered the way your energy changed when something mattered deeply to you. They remembered tiny details you probably assumed they had forgotten. And suddenly they understood that your strongest feelings were not always expressed through dramatic words. Sometimes they were hidden inside what you refused to do. You did not chase every misunderstanding. You did not demand to be understood every second. You did not turn every disappointment into a spectacle. And now your soulmate is wondering, how many times did I mistake strength for distance? How many times did I misunderstand someone who was actually trying to protect something meaningful? Stay till the end, because one question has started following them everywhere. What if I almost lost someone I never truly understood? That thought changed everything. They could no longer place you inside the simple story they once created about you. Every memory began opening another door. Every old conversation seemed to contain a clue. Every silence suddenly had another possible meaning. And the more they examined the past, the more one truth became impossible to ignore: you affected them far more deeply than they ever admitted, even to themselves. But the most surprising discovery was still waiting beneath all of those memories. Your soulmate realized that what they found was not merely information about you, it was a truth about what you awakened inside them. That is what they can never unsee. They noticed that even when they tried to distract themselves, certain memories of you returned without invitation. A sentence you once said. A look they remembered. A moment when you understood something without needing a long explanation. Why would those tiny moments remain when so many other memories faded? Why did your absence sometimes reveal more than your presence ever could? Something huge is waiting for you, because they finally stopped asking only, "Who are you really?" and started asking, "Why does knowing you make me see myself differently?" That question shook them. They began recognizing the difference between temporary fascination and a connection that forces someone to become more honest with themselves. Your soulmate may have spent a long time believing they needed certainty before acknowledging what they felt. But this discovery reversed everything. Now they understand that some truths become clear only after distance, silence, reflection, and time have removed the noise. Don't skip, because there is one final detail they keep returning to, and it may explain why their feelings suddenly seem stronger. They remembered a moment when you had every opportunity to show a different version of yourself, yet you remained exactly who you were. No performance. No desperate attempt to impress. No pretending to be perfect. Just something genuine that they failed to recognize fully at the time. And now they cannot erase that image from their mind. It has become the detail against which everything else is being measured. Stay till the end, because your soulmate is approaching a decision, and this discovery has made avoiding that decision much harder. They know that if they continue pretending nothing changed, they will be lying to themselves. They know they cannot return to the old version of the story because they have already seen what was underneath it. And tonight, one thought may be louder than every excuse they once used: I found something about you that I can never unsee, and now I need to decide what I am going to do about it. What they discovered was powerful, but the choice it is pushing them toward could change everything that happens next. What happened inside your soulmate after that realization was even more intense than the discovery itself. My beloved child, they tried to push the thought away, but every attempt only brought another memory of you rushing back. Suddenly, moments they once considered ordinary began carrying completely different meanings. A conversation they barely noticed at the time. A quiet moment when you chose understanding instead of conflict. A time when you could have demanded attention but chose dignity instead. Why were these memories becoming so vivid now? Why did your smallest actions suddenly seem more important than the biggest promises they had heard from other people? Don't skip, because this is where your soulmate began realizing that what they found about you was not something they could simply acknowledge and forget. It changed the entire picture. They had spent so much time trying to understand you through what you said that they overlooked what your actions had been revealing all along. And once they finally noticed the pattern, everything became impossible to dismiss. You were not trying to convince them of your value. You were showing it quietly. You were not constantly asking to be chosen. You were watching to see whether they could recognize something genuine without being forced to recognize it. That realization hit them differently because it raised an uncomfortable question: how did I miss this for so long? Stay till the end, because another discovery followed immediately after that question. Your soulmate remembered the moments when you seemed to pull back, and instead of seeing rejection, they suddenly saw emotional protection. They began wondering whether you were waiting for consistency rather than promises, whether your silence was asking questions your voice never needed to ask. Could you trust them? Could they understand you without making you explain every feeling? Could they recognize your heart before distance made them realize its value? Something huge is waiting for you, because those questions have now become impossible for them to escape. And the more they examine what happened between you, the more they realize they may have misunderstood one of the most important things about you. The revelation became stronger when your soulmate started comparing you with everyone else who had passed through their life. They noticed something they had never admitted before: you left a different kind of impression. Not because you were louder. Not because you demanded more. But because something about you remained after the moment ended. Your words returned later. Your kindness became clearer in hindsight. Your boundaries suddenly made sense. Even the things that once confused them started looking like evidence of someone who knew that real connection could not survive without honesty and respect. My beloved child, imagine what that realization does to someone who thought they had already figured you out. They now understand there were layers beneath your behavior they never took enough time to explore. Don't skip, because the next thought is the one that truly unsettled their old assumptions. They began wondering whether you had recognized something about them long before they recognized something about you. What if you saw their uncertainty? What if you noticed their hesitation? What if you understood exactly why they were pulling back, yet you refused to pressure them? Suddenly your soulmate remembered moments when you seemed to know what they were feeling without being told. They remembered how you sometimes changed the subject at exactly the right moment, how you gave space when they needed it, and how you could sense when something beneath the surface was different. Were those coincidences, or had you been paying attention in a way they never appreciated? Stay till the end, because this is where their curiosity turned into something deeper. Your soulmate realized they had been searching for dramatic proof while overlooking the quiet evidence sitting directly in front of them. And now one question keeps returning: if this person understood me when I could barely understand myself, what else have I failed to see? That question opened another door. They began remembering what happened whenever other people misunderstood you. You did not always rush to correct them. Sometimes you simply allowed time to reveal what explanations could not. Your soulmate now sees that differently. They realize your quietness was never emptiness. There was thought behind it. There was awareness behind it. There were feelings behind it that you did not hand over carelessly. Something huge is waiting for you, because the more clearly they see this version of you, the more they are questioning the version of themselves that failed to recognize it sooner. And then came the realization they were least prepared to face. My beloved child, your soulmate understood that they were not simply afraid of losing your attention, they were afraid that someone else might recognize in you what they had taken too long to understand. That thought changed the emotional weight of everything. Suddenly, time mattered. Suddenly, silence no longer felt comfortable. Suddenly, waiting indefinitely seemed like a decision of its own. Don't skip, because this is exactly where their next choice begins forming. They imagined what it would feel like to watch you move forward without them, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally chose peace over uncertainty. And something inside them resisted that possibility immediately. Why? Because now they have seen something about you that cannot be unseen. They have seen the patience behind your distance. The sincerity behind your restraint. The depth behind the moments they once underestimated. And now they know another person could eventually see those same qualities without needing so much time. Stay till the end, because your soulmate has started asking themselves the question that could change everything. If I know what this connection means to me now, what am I still waiting for? They do not have an easy answer. Every excuse sounds weaker than it did before. Every reason for remaining silent now competes with the possibility of regret. And for the first time, they are imagining what would happen if they stopped analyzing and finally became completely honest. What would they say to you first? Would they admit they misunderstood you? Would they tell you which moment changed their perspective? Would they reveal how long they have been replaying certain memories? Something huge is waiting for you, because there is one specific truth they have not yet confronted fully. It is connected to the exact thing they discovered about you, the detail that made everything else fall into place. They thought it would simply answer their questions, but instead it created a much bigger one. And that question is no longer about your feelings. It is about theirs. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that what they cannot unsee about you may also be what they can no longer deny about themselves. And when that final truth becomes clear, the silence between you may become impossible for them to maintain. My beloved child, the silence that once felt safe to your soulmate is beginning to feel impossible to maintain, because the more they understand what they discovered about you, the more they realize this was never just another passing connection. Something changed when they finally stopped looking at individual moments and started seeing the complete pattern. Suddenly, your patience, your boundaries, your quiet strength, and even the times you stepped away all seemed connected. Don't skip, because this is where the truth becomes much deeper. Your soulmate has started replaying one particular memory differently from all the others. A moment when you could have chosen the easiest reaction, yet you chose the response that protected your dignity and revealed your character. They may not have understood its importance then, but now that memory refuses to leave them. Why did you respond that way? Why did you refuse to become someone else simply to keep their attention? Why did you remain genuine when pretending might have been easier? Those questions led them to something they were not expecting. They realized you were never asking them to rescue you, complete you, or constantly prove your worth. You simply wanted something real enough that neither person had to pretend. Stay till the end, because that realization has completely changed what your soulmate thinks they could lose. Before, they may have believed there would always be more time. Another conversation. Another opportunity. Another chance to say what remained unsaid. But now they are beginning to understand that meaningful people do not wait forever inside unfinished stories. Eventually, they choose clarity. Eventually, they choose peace. Eventually, they stop standing at doors that nobody is willing to open. And your soulmate is wondering whether you are getting closer to that moment. Something huge is waiting for you, because this possibility has forced them to confront a question they avoided for too long. What happens if I finally become ready after this person has already learned to live without my answer? That question follows them because they know your value does not depend on whether they recognize it. And strangely, that is exactly what makes their realization stronger. Now your soulmate is beginning to notice another truth they can never unsee. You were never as emotionally predictable as they assumed, because there was always more happening beneath your calm exterior than you allowed everyone to witness. My beloved child, they once believed that if you cared deeply enough, you would always show it loudly. Now they understand that some of your strongest feelings may have appeared through consistency, patience, attention, and the small things you remembered. Don't skip, because this changed the meaning of several moments between you. Your soulmate remembered something you noticed about them that almost everyone else overlooked. Perhaps it was a tiny preference, a change in their mood, something they mentioned once and forgot, or a moment when you sensed they needed understanding without asking for it. At the time, they may have brushed it aside. Now they are asking themselves, why did this person notice what everyone else missed? And suddenly they see something extraordinary, not perfection, not fantasy, but presence. You were paying attention. You were seeing them beyond the obvious. And that realization has made them wonder how much of you they failed to notice in return. Stay till the end, because their next realization was even stronger. They started thinking about what would happen if they finally told you everything. No games. No guessing. No hiding behind convenient explanations. Just honesty. Would you still listen? Would you believe that their perspective had genuinely changed? Would you give them space to explain why it took so long? Or would you simply look at them with the calm expression that has become impossible for them to forget? Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate is no longer imagining only the comfortable outcome. They are considering the possibility that honesty might require courage without guaranteeing an answer. And still, something inside them is saying it may be worth it. That is important. Before this discovery, uncertainty gave them an excuse to remain still. Now uncertainty is becoming the reason they feel they must move. Because what if they never speak and spend years wondering what could have happened? What if the thing they discovered about you becomes the memory they compare every future connection against? What if they meet countless people and still remember the one person who made them feel understood without demanding that they become someone else first? But there is one final layer your soulmate has only begun to uncover, and this may be the reason everything feels different now. My beloved child, the thing they can never unsee is not merely something beautiful about you, it is the realization that knowing you challenged them to become more honest about themselves. Don't skip, because this is the turning point. They are recognizing where fear influenced their decisions. They are recognizing where assumptions replaced communication. They are recognizing moments when they expected you to understand what they themselves were unwilling to say. And instead of blaming you for the distance, they are beginning to ask what responsibility belongs to them. That question changes everything. Stay till the end, because once someone begins seeing their own choices clearly, the old excuses lose their power. Your soulmate can no longer comfortably tell themselves, "May."